Birmingham Council is Labour run. It's in the situation where it's nearly in bankruptcy. It's effectively in bankruptcy. It is a Labour council. This is an example of Labour not keeping within budgets, Labour not running an organisation and a local authority, a piece of government essentially, properly. Why do you think we should trust you and your front bench and Sir Keir Starmer to run the country properly when there's so many problems in Birmingham?
Well, the situation in Birmingham is very serious. That's why this notice, it's called a Section 114 notice, has been issued. And Birmingham City Council is not the first local authority this has happened to, and it won't be the last. We've had smaller councils like Woking and Thurrock over the past year or so of all political stripes. So it's not just a matter of whether somewhere is Labour run. This is a wider indication of the financial pressure that councils of all political stripes are under. And I fear that
there are plenty of councils. There are plenty of councils.
Sorry, Pat. It won't be the last.
There are plenty of councils, both Labour and Conservative, that keep within their means, that keep the amount of council tax they raise, and are able to run a local authority, a local council properly. But yet Labour-run Birmingham hasn't managed to do that.
And what happened in Conservative-run Thurrock and other councils. This has happened to councils around the country of a different political stripe. I think it's a mistake to think this is because of the political party in control. This is indicative of wider financial problems in local authorities, and in this case the particular costs of the equal pay claims, which have put so much pressure on the council budget there.
Shouldn't they just have paid people equally in the first place? I mean, they made a mistake, they did things incorrectly.
Of course they should. Of course they should, and these equal pay claims are going back many, many years. That's why the sums involved on them are high, and the law, the position of paying women equally for the work they do is absolutely right. And it's a result of court cases about that has been the particular issue in Birmingham. In some other councils, it's ill-advised investments or other issues, but this has happened in a few places in recent years, and given the broader financial situation, my fear is it could happen in more.
You are someone who has been Shadow Chief Secretary of the Treasury, you're someone who knows the economy, you're someone who knows the Labour Party, and you're now in charge of its national campaign. You will no doubt want to fight the election on the economy, but many voters, including a lot of TalkTV viewers and listeners, really care about immigration, and they perhaps don't feel that either Labour or the Conservatives have a grip of immigration. What would you do to stop the boats?
Well, my colleague, the Shadow Secretary of State for Home Affairs, Yvette Cooper, has set out a 5-point plan on this. We're not so much for the big declaratory legislation that doesn't seem to work. The only boat that was stopped over the summer was the boat that the government hired themselves. Our 5-point plan involves dealing with the backlog, dealing with the hotels problem, cracking down on the gangs, cooperation with other countries to try to stop this, and getting some return agreements in place for those applicants whose applications are refused. This is the hard graft, maybe not as headline grabbing as some of the things the government is doing, but it's the kind of hard graft that we're going to have to do to crack what is a very difficult problem.
Pat, I wonder as well, just very briefly, you talked about another issue, another one of those 5 pledges. We've covered the economy, we've covered small boats. What about the NHS as well? £180 billion, up from the 139 billion since Labour was in power. Would you give it more money? What would you do? It's crumbling as well in terms of the RAC problems. What would you do to help it?
Again, what a damning indictment. When we left office, we had the highest levels of public satisfaction in the NHS since the creation of the NHS in 1948. Look at us now, 13 years later, 7.5 million people on waiting lists. And the thing that's at the heart of this is staffing. And that's why we came up with a plan to recruit and train more nurses and doctors. We set out exactly how we would pay for it, and the plan was so good, the government have said that they now agree with it themselves. We've already been setting the agenda for what's needed for the improvement of the NHS in opposition. If you combine that with our record in government, I'm very confident that we can turn the service around and make it the NHS that people want and believe in if we're given the chance to govern after the next election.